We are going to talk about financial data aggregation. So I want to know how many of you work with fintech, want to work with fintech, aware of fintech? A lot of them, right? So that's one of the hottest area right now for developers. And our company has been in fintech for a really long time. We actually have a platform which powers a lot of fintech innovation, and we're going to just take a look at that. So what we do at Yodlee is basically financial data aggregation. What that means is, take an example of anyone who has, anyone in the room probably has more than, one bank account, one checking, one savings, one credit card account, some insurance, maybe even brokerage and home loans, right? If you take a look at it as a common user, you want to keep a tab on your finances. Now you need to go to all these different banks. If your accounts are with different banks or institutes, you go all of them and then check balances, check transactions and all that. How cool it would be if you can build an app which gets all of the data from different financial institutes into one cool application. If you can build that application, it would be really popular with users, wouldn't it be? So let's take a look at, with Yodlee platform, you can actually build this kind of applications. And I'm going to talk about what exactly we do. So what we do is basically aggregate financial data from more than 15,000 financial institutes. You can name the bank and we can get data from them. You can name a financial institute and we can get data from them. We have a full-fledged aggregation platform, and that platform is available to developers through our APIs called Yodlee APIs. And you can access the financial data with very simple to use REST and JSON format. So that's what basically Yodlee has. It's a full-fledged data aggregation platform. Let's take a look at a bit of a history about Yodlee. Probably not many people heard about it because we have been in this business for a really long time, but we have always been a behind-the-scene data provider. So if you look at it, Yodlee was established in 1999. We started with our development around 2006, 10. A lot of our products were sold to big banks, but those were the application products. Around 2012, we figured out all the data we are gathering, all the capability and the platform which we have built, if we expose it to fintech world, it would be really cool. So that's where in 2012, we opened our platform as a open financial API platform. We got immediate traction with a lot of startups and cool application developers. And I don't know if you heard about companies like Personal Capital, Credit Karma, Mint.com was our launch partner, and many more. And we'll take a look at some of the examples as well. Went IPO in around 2014-15, and then we got merged with a company which is based in Chicago, InvestNet, around 2015 end. So for the Yodlee platform, as I mentioned, we aggregate data from 15,000 plus data sources. We have 1,000 plus customers, 22 million plus active users every month, 75 plus patents, and represented in 15 plus countries. The difference, we make a huge difference in terms of our platform. Again, I've talked about depth of data. Out of 15,000 sources, we have a direct feed from 70% of the sites. We built a lot of data intelligence and analytics based on the data we gather, and it's all available to developers and startup companies through the state-of-the-art RESTful APIs. Some of the use cases which have been built using the Yodlee platform are in the wealth, lending, personal finance, small business domain. Particularly in the personal finance, 360-degree view of your finances. The example is Personal Capital, Mint.com, and ID theft. LifeLock uses Yodlee platform for monitoring your transactions and alerting you in real time if they find anything fraudulent. Quick look at the Yodlee customer map. We work with the big financial institutes as well as internet innovators. So some of the applications which are built with Yodlee aggregation platform, and these are our sample applications, and I can actually demo this if time permits and if the internet works. So account summary, all your accounts summarized in one place, in one application. All your transaction across different banks summarized in one place. Once you have the accounts and transactions data, you can really build a very cool applications with that. Like you can do the recurring income and expense analysis. You can do cash flow analysis, net worth. If you are aggregating the brokerage information, you can aggregate across your 401ks, your retirement accounts, your active brokerage accounts, budgets. Let's take a look at the demo of money.yodlee.com and see all this in action. I get this here. Okay. So this is our demo application. It's available for anyone. You can actually use it. It's like live application, and take a look at it if you are interested in aggregating all your data in one place. Oops. Right, so if you look at the quick dashboard, it just shows your spending summary across the accounts. So right now I have linked 2 of my credit card accounts here. One is from American Express and Citi Cards, and typically you'll have to log into 2 different places to check on your transactions and all. With Yodlee platform, you can build applications which can show all your transactions in one place. You can do a lot of analysis with the expense and income analysis, as I mentioned, and we even have, like, you can categorize the transactions on yourself as well. I don't have any goals or investments set for the demo, but that's a quick demo of Yodlee application built on the Yodlee platform. This is our demo application. I also want to take a look at what we say as the APIs which are powering this application. So Yodlee APIs. Sorry, I just have to switch the. All right. So we have a full-fledged developer portal. Anyone can register, start playing around with the APIs. And the key APIs in here is basically getting a list of all the accounts. Once you link all your accounts, you can get it through simple to use APIs, and the response is through JSON, and I'll just show you. So this is my accounts coming through the accounts API. If you look at it, that's my Citibank account, credit card. There is another one, should be Amex credit card, and it has all the data from account name, account last 4 or 5 digits of account number, your minimum balance due if anyone has a balance due, and you have credit line limit, and when it was last refreshed, basically. The cool part is, again, the transactions data. If you look at the transactions, it tells you all my transactions, like if it's pending, if it's gone through. So if I shopped at Walmart, it will start showing up here with the default categorization, which you can change as well. And we also do a lot of cleanup of the merchant data for if there is a kind of a different names on the transaction descriptions from different credit card providers. We do that cleanup for you. Again, another example of my transactions here. So the cool part about this is all this data is available to you, and once you can think about not just the personal finance management applications, but there are various use cases using this data. We have seen our customers using this for evaluation in credit lending. We have seen the applications using, if a renter company wants to evaluate whether a person can, rent a particular apartment or not. Our data gives the visibility beyond just the credit report, and it actually goes, gives you actually real life data of their transactions. Okay? All right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Victoria Ganda. I am a software developer at Collective Idea. Before I started getting into software, I was also doing lighting design for dance. And I gained a lot of tools while doing that, a lot around the process that I used. And I realized many of these also applied and were helpful when I'm developing software. Whenever starting on a new project with a lighting design, you always have to take into consideration the vision of the choreographer. For example, with this piece that there's an image of, the choreographer wanted something otherworldly, described an emotion like as trapped. So I had to make sure I had that vision in my head. And the same goes when starting a new application. What is the client envisioning, or what problem does this solve for the end user? You need to get a good picture in your mind of what the end product is to be, what's needed or desired before you start creating. You have to keep in mind that it's for them, it's not for you. And then after that comes some research. There's usually some requirements and some restrictions or some background knowledge. Like for when you're designing, what equipment do you have? What kind of space are you in? What does the stage look like? What color are the costumes? Are there any time restrictions? And then also, like, if it's a time period piece or set in a specific location, or if other places have done it before, like this is Arabian from the Nutcracker that's been done so many times. You can do some research on how it's been done. Then with software, you have to do research on what technology you're going to use, or maybe some research to even decide what technology you're going to use, and what would work best, what people you have, what's the budget restrictions. Have other people solved similar problems before, and what did that look like, and does that apply to the situation? It's important to understand do this research and do this background research and know the knowledge before making these decisions. And then the implementation, that's the getting stuff done. For lighting, that's creating the light plot and picking lights and colors and intensities. Also the cue list, what order things happen in, and then programming the light board to do things on those cues. And then for software development, of course, this is the picking the technologies, writing stories, and estimating them, and then, of course, writing the code. And this is also that you can create the best product from the things that you know. And you want to make sure that you keep checking in to get feedback on what you're doing, to make sure that you're on the right track. If you're working with a choreographer, your ideas might not match what they were thinking, or their vision might have changed along the way. And then the same goes for software. You need to go back, make sure that you're doing what you're matching what was required, and making sure things did not change along the way. You could have made some incorrect assumptions, or some requirements could have changed. And it's important to make sure you keep checking on these so that everyone is happy with the end product. And then you keep iterating. You go back and repeat, just to make sure that you can adapt to any changes that have been made. The vision might change, like I said, restrictions could change, and you might have to redo some research because of this, and it could affect the implementation. You keep repeating all of these steps until you reach the end product, until you reach the day of the show. This is when everything has to be finished. There are deadlines, and even if you're working until the last minute, there has to be a time that the curtain opens, the show goes on, you ship that feature or that software or pass it off to a client. And there's no reversing that first look that someone gets of it. It can be exciting to let this creation be out in the wild that you've been working on for so long. And after everything, the show must go on. Thank you.
I'm Dan Knox from G2 Crowd, and what I have up there is just one of the ways that we can give back. So if you go to that address and fill out a review, then we'll actually give back to a giving campaign that we've done. All right, so what I'm going to give a talk on is TDD and pair programming and self-regulation. Okay, so just so everyone knows, like TDD, so that's test-driven development, meaning that you're kind of like writing tests along with doing your programming. And pair programming is when you're like actually with another dev and making things happen, okay? So, all right, so raise a hand here if you think that TDD and pair programming is a tool to make software better. Okay. Now, how many people here would keep their hands up if they say that they really think that they would like to do it? Yeah, so there's a lot less hands. And I think that some of the reason why is, some of the things that are up here. So, like, I'm sure that you've had the experience where you were pairing with somebody and there was only one keyboard and that person used it the entire time. And so, like, you were like, what am I doing here? So don't be the keyboard hog. So that's number one. Use Screen Hero, especially if you're doing like remote pairing. That's really key. And then when you get into test-driven development with pair programming, make sure that you're doing some sort of ping-pong effect, which means that somebody's writing the tests, and that test needs to have success, so the other person is writing the success. Okay? So ping-pong approach, test fail until success, right? Or there could be many other ways that you get to this, so getting software better is what we really are looking for within these tools, right? So there may be many other methods, but the big thing is that software will hurt someone. So in our day and age, there will be a time when software will hurt someone. And the idea is that do you want to self-regulate, or do you want Uncle Sam to self-regulate, right? And so the idea is that, if TDD and pair programming is not the thing, I mean, obviously, the hands here showed that it's not the thing that, it's at least not the tools that we're using. We need to find some tools that are going to work for us and that we will not have to be regulated. All right, so just a real quick reminder on this, like this is one way that we give back. I'm pretty sure that there's probably a way that your company can find synergy in both what you're doing and giving back to the community. So that's it.
So I'm Fernando. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Imperfect Humans, building perfect software. This talks a little bit about human interaction, which might be more or less relevant for some of you. So I'm just going to throw a few questions out here. No need to raise hands, but these are more for yourselves to answer. You can nod if you want. Nodding is cheap, I guess. So do you feel better when you work alone than when you work with others, maybe? Do you sometimes struggle getting those PRs out because you feel like getting into these debates over things that might not be that important? They might have worked from the very beginning. Do you sometimes maybe feel like your ideas are never picked? Or maybe the opposite. Do you feel like people sometimes dislike you because you push too hard for some ideas? I hope many of you have related to some of these things. I certainly have in the past. If so, what you might be suffering is lack of people skills. I think this is probably a kind of thing with programmers. If you think programming is hard, try people. Sometimes depends on how well you deal with your coworkers. This might be simple, sometimes it's not. I was interested before, Sam was talking about scaling at Google scale. They probably have had very severe technical problems, but can you even imagine how to coordinate thousands of people to work on single repositories or projects? That must be daunting. Realistically, it needs to happen, it needs to work in teams. There are cases where people can ship very interesting concepts or projects by themselves, but as things grow large, you really need to incorporate people into your projects. So you really need to figure out how to deal with them. It seems like some teams really thrive on diversity and having multiple opinions coming to one single PR review project or whatever. Some other times it seems like we spend a lot of energy fighting over this is better, and you never know, right? So the code review time is very important. There is this one conference talk from Derek Pryor about implementing a strong code review culture in your team, which I encourage you to watch if you haven't. And there are a lot of suggestions out there on how to really get a lot of value out of code reviews, which is something that I feel like it's never taught. You're sort of expected to jump into a code review when you go into tech and expect to know how to answer questions, how to really make useful comments. So I really encourage you to like watch that talk. I really think that there's multiple things that are very interesting in that talk. Like for example, like just don't point out things like change this, change that, but instead just like assume, just like give the benefit of the doubt and just like ask questions about like why would you do this, or maybe not like that, but like why is this important? Have you tried doing it this different way? Or just give suggestions, right? Like encourage conversations. Try to like understand your teammates at a technical level to really have like a much better flow of ideas, but also like try to understand and get to know people on a personal level. I think that gives you enough of a background to be able to not really burn out with your teammates. I think that's very important. When you are having like fun coding, that really goes along when you're having fun with your people that you are around with. So really try to be nice there. I was also talking with my friend Zach here earlier about like how we all, I hope, try to write our code in a way that is as readable as possible. But if you think of it like code readability is on many levels, if not all, extremely subjective. It depends really on the person that's reading it, and you're only going to like be able to optimize that as you really get to know that person. I think like probably the optimal developer is not the one that really is able to write perfect code, because there's some areas where such thing does not exist, but like the person that's able to adapt to any team that jumps in, not even the code base, but like the team. You really get to know your teammates and you adapt to whatever works with them. Those are very useful skills. I think also that open source, it's a great playground. It's like the expert level of human interaction, because you don't get to see their faces, you don't get to hear their voices. A lot of context is lost in just like typing messages, and it's important to like make things work. We probably all read articles about people having been burned out in open source projects and having left. That's really a shame to be losing talent because we cannot get along as humans. So try open source if you feel like you don't really like know where to get different experiences than maybe your coworkers. I definitely think that's a very nice idea. And really, as a summary here, just be humble, be nice to other people, keep learning, keep sharing experiences. So hopefully that meant something for some people here. So thank you very much.
So my handle is modellurgist, as in metallurgist, only models. And under published presentations there you can find this. The talk is Pushing the Limits. I should say, by the way, that I'm here with a great team from Home Chef Meal Kit Delivery Service here in Chicago, you might have heard of. So the foundation of the calculus is the limit of a function in terms of an approach to an infinitely small delta. And another idea that is somewhat similar is the idea of extreme programming, which fed into a lot of agile practices that you're familiar with, just talked about. Pair programming. The basic idea of extreme programming was not just to use the word extreme like in the 90s, but if a little of a thing is good and a little more of it is better, what if we did that thing all the time? That's where a lot of the practices came from. So pair programming is reviewing code continuously with a partner. Test-driven development is testing first and always, continuously. And there's some application to other practices. So in some of the other conference talks, the law of Demeter, there was the idea of a limited interface. That was one of the principles that was on the list, where that interface is the number of public methods. We saw that violating that law or encapsulation adds cost. In one of the examples, the change didn't just have to happen in one place. Due to the violation, it had to happen in 3 places in that case. In the Rails DB anti-patterns talk, we saw that instead of using multiple join models, one of the solutions to a problem was using multiple join models instead of a single polymorphic for separate, distinct domain concepts. In the Strava reverb, factoring out into many objects thoughtfully, each of those had few or single responsibilities. So there are some independent variables in our control when we program: the number of methods per class, the number of lines per method, the number of dependencies per class in the form of mix-ins or class module requires, the number of side effects per method, including changes to inputs or the use of state, the number of arguments, etc. So you can think of a function, and those are the independent variables to our program, our whole program, our system. And there's an additive cost function, whether we know, the exact mapping of that. And so each of the terms of that additive function might include the number of lines of code we have to maintain, the cognitive overhead to understand the consequences of changes we make, dependency coupling and the number of places to modify, the churn risk the risk of a new bug due to churn, due to a mistake we made in modifying a class or a file or a method, the number of combinations of arguments or attributes that are encountered in method definitions and what their schema is, the number of design patterns or anti-patterns we have to know and consider in order to mitigate, but not necessarily reach the theoretical minimum of these costs. Argument, nil, and validation checks. Oh gosh, I got 1 minute left. And the cost to do big, deep changes and refactorings, the number of tests, the mocking, stubbing overhead per test. So I'm going to boil down the idea here. Many have proposed a lot of interesting ideas over the years, many great luminaries. One interesting project I came across recently that you might have seen is called DryRB, dry/rb.org. So they have a functional programming OO blend pattern that they use, which is a one method object. It has a single method call, and the nice thing is you can use a lambda also in your test to mock that out. So this is an experiment that I'd like to ask you to try. What if we took a lot of those inputs, those independent variables that I mentioned, and took it to an extreme where you just have a single method in your classes all the time, maybe some side project that you want to do or some refactoring, unless there's a really, really, really good reason not to do that. So I would say eager separation or distinction of concepts rather than late separation or distinction of concepts. Even if you cheat a little bit on this, does it take you to new and interesting places? You can look at the presentation for some other thoughts and resources, including RomRB, Hanami, and some other interesting talks. Thanks.